And we're back with more of the Shacknews Awards 2023. This time, we're talking about the Sony PlayStation 5. We're going to do the best PS5 game of the year. This does not have to be an exclusive. This can just be a game that released in the year 2023 on the PlayStation 5 console. So, what do we got? What are these nominations we're looking at this year? It appears
Some
that
bangers.
Marvel's, yeah, this is a pretty good year for video games. I don't know if you noticed. For PS5, Marvel's Spider-Man 2, Final Fantasy 16, Humanity, Baldur's Gate 3, Resident Evil 4, and Lies of P. Those are our 6 nominees for us to deliberate on today. So, who would like to get things started? Donovan, you reviewed Marvel Spider-Man 2. Would you like to talk about Spider-Man?
I did and I would, yes. Marvel Spider-Man 2, the sequel to Shacknews' 2018 Game of the Year. I'll remind you, is excellent. It's great. It is the technically the third game in that series because Miles Morales was the second game, but it's excellent. You get to play as both Spider-Men. They deliver on the promise of having those two characters as like dual protagonists. The way they intertwine the stories of Peter and Miles with their Spider-Man personas is like classic comic book Spider-Man storytelling. I think gameplay wise, they differentiate them really well. They both got new abilities, but Miles is doing his Venom thing. And by Venom, I mean his electricity powers is what they're called. And turning invisible. Peter's got the symbiote going on, so I think they do a good job of differentiating them. The world of New York in Spider-Man 2 is a lot better. They've expanded the map to include, I believe it's Queens
Queens
and
and
Brooklyn.
Brooklyn.
Yeah,
Yep.
which is their like respective boroughs for Peter Parker and Miles Morales. They've added the web wings. The boss battles have been completely overhauled. I think this has been like maybe the biggest flex from Insomniac Games uh, since they've been working under PlayStation Studios. Just the fact that they churn out these high quality games on like a higher frequency than most AAA studios. I mean,
That
Ratchet and
web
Clank was
wing
like 2 years ago at this point.
amazing.
They're really good. A lot of fun.
It's
That
just the
is
scale of the game is astonishing. Like
mhm.
that first boss battle against Sandman, like just the scale of this game
Maybe
is
into that, like
Mhm.
maybe the most impressive video game opening I can remember playing in a long time. Like cinematic, but also gameplay. You're not just watching stuff happen.
Yeah.
I love the banter between Peter and Miles. I'm not as like current on Spider-Man, but I didn't feel like I had to be. Like I instantly saw the friendship and connection between them. I love that. Like the game is great, but that opening in particular really left an impression on me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That was a big criticism of the first game was the QuickTime events, and they got rid of those for the most part.
They're not completely gone. It's more like how Uncharted handles them, or God of War would handle those kind of moments where you're still hitting a button, you're still having to hit triangle, or yeah, there's timed attacks that are still occurring. It's not as cinematic. And I think the thing that's really important to note is that while the game has these like really amazing cutscenes, the graphics don't really drop off at all from the cutscenes to the gameplay. It is a gorgeous game, like astonishingly beautiful game. And I'm playing it on performance mode,
So
just because I like my 60 frames per second. And it still looks amazing.
I still remember when we posted the Sandman boss battle to our YouTube channel, and I was like, oh, wow, we really spoiled that, huh? Well, I guess I know what to expect about 10, 15 hours in. And then I start playing, and I go, oh, no, we're opening with this. I see. That's a hell of an opener, and just the
Yeah.
scale of it is just incredible. And the traversal, which was already so good in the first two games, the web wings just make it so much better. It makes it so much faster and
Okay.
cooler and smoother.
I have to say something about the web wings.
Oh.
I reviewed Superman 64. It was one of the first games I ever reviewed as a games journalist. It's one of the worst games ever. I get flashbacks when I'm using web wings because of those rings that appear. Like
oh yeah,
Mhm.
fair enough.
I'm like, God, couldn't you have
Oh
done
no,
like
Lex Luthor's coming to New York.
any other shape? I would have been fine with, but seeing those rings, I'm like, ah. But
Mhm.
it's fine, like, because I love sweet jumps in video games, and that like Spider-Man's all about sweet jumps, flying around. Adding that extra level of traversal is great, But yeah, I did get some Superman 64 flashbacks when I first played
It's
that.
worth
I also
talking
just
about
don't...
the.
Yeah, go ahead, Don.
I was gonna say, it's just worth talking about the PS5 of it all, right? Like what that game does technically with that hardware, like with the loading screens. I know a lot of videos went viral when that game was coming out, where once you've unlocked fast travel in a region of New York, you just drop a pin, and then it takes you out of the menu, and Peter or Miles just swinging onto that like exact location on the map, not like a nearby checkpoint, like down to the square foot. You can just kind of warp anywhere on that map and be there in seconds. It's pretty magical.
There's a mission like kind of early on in the game. I don't think it's a spoiler to say that Black Cat's in this game, but like there's
Oh yeah,
like that chase scene that kind of reminded
Mhm.
me of Rift Apart, where you're jumping all over the place instantly.
You're going across dimensions without any loading whatsoever, and it's just such a technical marvel to witness.
Yeah, it's still really impressive. Even though like we've seen it in Ratchet and Clank already, every time I come across that in a PlayStation game, it is noticeable, and it's one of those things that I think Cerny talked about when they were showing off the hardware for PlayStation 5. Like it is one of those things that is noticeable, and you're like, wow, they're using
and
this
that you
hardware.
can only like we'll get more into this when we talk about like best PC port, but like it is one of those things that you can only really get on that hardware. Like you can't really get this quite the same way on PC or anything else.
Yeah, not yet. And yeah, I think the NVMe tech exists in PC, but you have to build Steam games to run with traditional hardware too. So yeah, I think there's a scalability issue that they run into with some of these games when they bring them to PC. But yeah, this game really shines on PS5. So it's a very solid first nomination in what is a pretty stacked category. Next up is Final Fantasy 16. I'm not sure. No one here actually reviewed it. We had a freelancer review this one, but I am curious.
TJ's a combo master at Final Fantasy 16.
So yeah, I was curious who would like to speak on behalf of this game or tell us that it's all terrible. Anybody?
I did the video review. I mean, I watched like gameplay of it. I haven't played it yet because I don't have a PS5 yet. I'm working on it, but I would say like it's definitely an evolution of the series. Like they try to improve their writing, their graphics, their effects. There's that cute little dog that everyone loves. I forget what the name is though. TJ, you know what the dog is called? Torgal. Yeah, I mean like it's a cute little dog, and of course it's a PS5 timed exclusive, so it's only on PS5, which makes it a good nomination anyway because it's only in one place. But like those Final Fantasy games, they're a lot of hit or miss because sometimes they want to evolve the franchise, and sometimes they miss, sometimes they hit, and you just never know what's going to happen. But I can respect it for being innovative and trying new things. Yeah,
I played a little bit of it, and I thought the evolution of the combat was.
There you go.
I don't want to say it's for the better, but it's good for what it is, and I actually really like that they base a lot of that combat formula on like old school Marvel vs. Capcom, and just the action RPG element is just so it hits so hard. It's epic when it needs to be. I'm enjoying it for what it is. I'm not through the full game yet, but I'm really enjoying my time with it.
Yeah, it seems like the least RPG like Final Fantasy they've shipped in quite some time. Like it's definitely more like you said, action oriented. Which I guess the franchise has kind of been going that direction with 15 and then with 7 remake and now this. Like it does seem like
it was better than Chaos Game. I'll tell you that.
Well, for people who don't know what Chaos Game is, are you talking about Strangers in Paradise? Yeah, okay. Yeah, I was just like, some people may not know what Chaos Game
Chaos
is.
killing game.
Yeah. But
Man,
yeah,
when I played, I do feel like it reminds me kind of Devil May Cry 5. A bit, kind of gives me a little bit of that vibe with the combat side. I think they actually had someone working on it on the previous DMC involved with the combat system, so that would make sense.
They had a lot of people working on this one. I know Platinum Games was involved as well. And
what are the big flying things called in this game? They're not dragons, but what are the hell?
Icons.
Icons.
Yeah.
Icons. Yeah.
Was that implemented as well as it could have been? Because it seemed.
I thought it was pretty cool.
Okay.
Ultimately, like it ended up like kaiju fights, but I also liked the fact that every time you get a new one, you like just develop new powers that you can then strap onto your regular combat style. Denny's right. It's the best Devil May Cry game in the Final Fantasy series. And if you want to watch like, I poured over like what attacks fit into each other and keep a combo going best and give me the best evasion. And like, if you go and look at some of the videos I put up for Shacknews this year, I need to continue that series of like doing the hunts and doing no damage runs on against some of those monsters. And I'm just like doing ballerina acts around these monsters, hitting them with tornadoes and fire and lightning and Torgal and just everything.
Yeah, the
It's
DMC and the fighting game DNA are just undeniable. And like, you can argue whether it makes it a good Final Fantasy game, but it's a fun game, period.
it's far more action than it is RPG this time, which it still has pretty great characters and a lot of stuff to do. So like, I can't even fault it for. It still has like that RPG DNA where like there were a lot of characters in that game that I had considered for my favorite NPC this year, but just a fantastic story to boot. I think it's one of the best that they've done in a while.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I think we're going to be talking about Final Fantasy 16 and other categories as well. Moving on, this game may have slipped under some people's radar this year because just the time that it came out, and also it's a quirky puzzle game. But Humanity, from the people who brought us Tetris Effect and Luminous and Rez, some of my favorite games ever, right there. Humanity it's like a 3D Lemmings-like game, where you are a spectral Shiba Inu who tries to guide people to the exit. I don't know if this is a game about the afterlife or what, but it's great. The music's outstanding. It's like a chill game, but at the same time, when you get later into the different difficulties of the puzzles, it becomes pretty intense, which is like Tetris Effect, which is like Rez, which is like a lot of their games. Their studio has their own synesthesia engine, which combines haptics and sound and visuals and audio cues all together to make these games very interesting. I think Humanity's great. It's definitely a game that came out on PS5. I think it's on PSVR 2 also, which is pretty outstanding. So yeah, it's a game that came out on PS5. It's not exclusive to PS5, but it's definitely, in our opinion, one of the top 6 games to come out on PS5 this year. Has anyone else had some experience with Humanity they'd like to talk about?
It reminded me of there's a game on the PlayStation called Cubed or CubeX, where like you were on a platform and you had certain charges and you had to look down the line and see what was coming, and like the same. It was a really simplistic art style, like not super detailed. It reminded me a lot about that. But like, yeah, it's a fun little puzzle game, especially when like all the NPCs fall off a cliff, or they jump. Like, I thought that was really cute. Like, there's a lot of little subtleties in the game that make it like fun and interesting for not being like a super high end Baldur's Gate 3 type of game.
But it's also like the gameplay is very deep. Like it introduces you to stuff as you play through it, but you can set up turns, you can set up jumps, you can set up all these things for your people to get to these places. And then there's this other, like, like a good puzzle game. Okay, you can solve the puzzle, but then you can 100% it also, right? And that involves getting these gold figures to go through the portal or whatever with the rest of your gang. So it's like, I love games like that where it's like, okay, I beat this level, but I can go back and 100% it. Like another game we're going to talk about in other categories, Mario Wonder. It's a good example of that. That's not a tough game to beat. It's a very difficult game to 100%. And I think that's true of Humanity as well. So from a replay standpoint, I think that's pretty great. But also, there's a ton of community levels. Like, this is a game where you don't just have the puzzles that they shipped. They gave us the tools to make our own levels. And that's keeping the game fresh. It's keeping the content creator scene kind of around the game too. But yeah, shout out to Humanity and Enhanced Games. I think they make excellent video games. This is just another one of their another example of like how different they are. Because this is probably one of the more unique games we're going to talk about during the Shacknews Awards, in my opinion. But yeah, so Humanity. Next up is this tiny game called, it's really short, cozy game called Baldur's Gate 3. It was super easy to beat, right, Sam? I believe you're reviewing it for Shack News.
Yeah, super fast. Didn't take me very long at all.
Yeah. I know you were playing it on PC, right?
That's correct. Yeah, so
Okay.
I'm more familiar with that on PC. Correct me if I'm wrong, TJ. Have you been playing this on PlayStation 5?
I have.
Yeah, awesome.
This is like very specifically. Sam and I were playing. And I mean, my spouse Sam. We're playing Divinity: Original Sin 2 before this game. And so, like, when I found out that Baldur's Gate 3 was going to be coming to PS5 and the local co-op would be intact, I like flipped my lid because I was like ready for that. They're so good at doing that. It's really easy to set up a co-op session or an online session with Baldur's Gate 3, and there's a little bit of a hitch I think in performance. I think the frame rate goes down to 30 as opposed to 60. But there's like no issues in performance. Everything works as intended. Like I run around one side of the area while Sam runs around another side. We perform like intricate, complex strategies. I think I mentioned that there was this guy that was like guarding something that we wanted to take. And so Sam started a conversation with him, and I like snuck around his back and stole from him while Sam was in dialogue with him. And it's just that's the kind of stuff you can do with that game. And I just love it. It's so fun. It's so creative, and you can stretch your as much as you can stretch your imagination in that game, it's incredible how many interactions there are.
So
Yeah.
Sam, you're playing it on PC.
Yeah, I was
TJ,
going to say...
the controller support, I'm kind of curious about. Sorry, Sam. I was just curious what you thought of how it is implemented with a controller, TJ.
I was going to echo that as well in terms of like, yeah.
Pretty intuitive. You have a button that opens up your abilities wheel. And like in the abilities wheel, you have your general actions, your personal spells, and stuff like that. You have a button that brings up a wheel that gives you your inventory, your party management, your return to camp, and all that. Sam has a little bit more trouble with it than I do because there are a lot of button combinations that are kind of strange. Like if you press up on the D-pad, it will like take it to a straight down overhead view that's like supposed to be more tactical. And he had trouble trying to get out of that view for a while. There's also a chance that when like if you're in dialogue with somebody and your partner comes up and like they can listen into the dialogue, but then the camera was locked on my character after the dialogue. So there are little things that are like, again, there's so many interactions in this game, and trying to put all of that on a gamepad, I think, had to have been a ridiculous challenge. But I think that it controls functionally enough for most people to handle.
And like you said, they had experience with Divinity games, with porting those to console as well.
It seems to me like if you're good with if you play games on console and you're used to a controller, it's probably a non-factor. Like you do this all the time. But if you're someone who plays a lot on PC and is used to playing like experiences like that, inventory management with like a mouse and keyboard, and then you grab a controller, you might be like, eh. But it's just I think it just comes down to like your experience. Like how you
definitely.
play games.
Because I mean, I played it on keyboard and mouse, but I wanted to see how it felt on a controller, and so I did start using a controller. I'm like, okay, I can definitely see how this works. If you're like Bill, like you're saying, if you're comfortable with a controller, how they've managed to put so many interactions from a keyboard onto a controller and still make it feel functional, like you actually perform the actions that are in your imagination and see them realized in the game. Yeah, it's quite incredible, really.
Nice. Well, let's move on from Baldur's Gate 3 because I have a feeling we're going to talk about that game more in other categories. I have a feeling that we might be talking about Baldur's Gate more during the Shacknews Awards 2023. This little game came out earlier this year, just kind of out of nowhere. No one was really expecting this. This is a game called Resident Evil 4, I believe. Just a tiny game from Capcom. No one's ever really heard of. It's out on PS5 this year. It's excellent. The RE4 remake is just absurd. I didn't play it on PS5. I had it on. I have it for Xbox right now, but it runs great over there. Has anyone played it on PS5? I think TJ, you reviewed it, right? Was that the PS5 version that you reviewed?
Yes.
Okay.
And I feel like the one thing that I had an issue with was like, and David, I think you saw this with me, was the lake area. The water is weirdly choppy for like everything else in the game looking so gorgeous and so perfect. The water does like weird movement that I wouldn't say I
Looks like
expected
it's
on a
like
PS5.
2 frames of animation as you're like cutting waves. And the other thing is, and this is really, I mean, this is nitpicky stuff, which is a testament to how good the game is on PS5. But like the rain looks just kind of like some white slashes, where on PC it looks like rain because I can, tweak a bunch of bells and whistles. I mean, otherwise, yeah, like I was writing guides for this game. I headed up guides, and I started on PS5 and then switched over to PC so we could have write ups on different experiences. But I thought the PS5 version was great, and Resident Evil 5. I mean, Capcom. Well, Resident Evil 5. We'll probably talk about that in a couple of years, but Capcom has just done a great job with the options you have in these games just to tweak the experience, even on consoles. Like, gone are the days when console options were volume and like screen placement. Yeah, it's just a really solid game on PS5.
I will
It's a really
also
solid game everywhere.
I will also
Yeah.
go ahead and say that I am fully aware that it's a bit harder to aim on PS5 gamepad than it is on a mouse and keyboard. Despite that, I S ranked every one of those shooting galleries with a gamepad, and I'm pretty proud of that.
That's
I still think
impressive.
I think that almost goes right back to my Baldur's Gate statement, though, right? Like, I used to not be able to aim with a mouse and keyboard because I was used to aiming with a controller, and it's just, what are you comfortable with?
Yeah.
All I
Also,
know is if there's a bear trap, I'm gonna step in it. That's all I know. I
yeah,
found it.
same.
It's
I do
like
know that
if there
about
was the
your
opposite
test.
of a speedrun category for RE4, it was just all bear traps. I'm your guy. I'm really good at
I
it.
will say this: the PS5 version of Resident Evil 4 makes good use of the adaptive control triggers.
Yes, yes,
It does a good job with the knife, and it does a good job with the aiming, the feel of the trigger pull, and the recoil when you fire. I liked that a lot on the PS5 version of Resident Evil 4.
Yeah, obviously, you're going to aim better. You're going to be more accurate with the mouse and keyboard, and that's the experience I had playing this on PC. Although, to TJ's point, I have not S plus ranked all the shooting gallery challenges, but I coming from the PS5, I missed the use of the adaptive triggers, and it was something I didn't even really think about until I was just kind of pointing and clicking, and I was like, well, why isn't the feedback as fun? It's because of those adaptive triggers. It's really adds a lot to the game.
Awesome. Does anyone else want to chime in on how great RE4 is? No, we're good. Or Denny, you got something, Denny? Feels like you were about
I
to say
mean,
something.
I feel like we're going to talk about it more in a few other categories. So,
True.
but yeah,
True.
but the adaptive triggers was a good thing to bring up. Yeah, I did enjoy the controller feel for the game. So definitely a unique feature on the PS5, and I think times.
Nice. Well, our final nominee for this category, and this category is going a little long, but these are all excellent games that deserve to be talked about, is a Souls-like in the Pinocchio universe called Lies of P. And this like felt like a Mad Lib when we saw the original reveal trailer. Like I was like, okay, but they did it, and this is a gorgeous game. It runs on UE5. I think it's one of the first games to use the nanite tech. So it looks amazing. It plays very well, and I think it surprised a lot of people because it's a great game. Lies of P third party release on PS5 this year, but worthy of recognition. Also, kind of highlights that this wasn't the best year for first party PlayStation titles. That there were so many third parties that made this list. Not a neg on Sony at all. Just that this was, this wasn't a year full of releases for them. And this is what, year 3 of the PlayStation 5. So
It's a little bit lighter.
Yeah, it's a lighter year for them, but you know, you have Insomniac making a banger like Spider-Man 2. They're obviously working on Wolverine now too, so there's plenty of stuff to come. And they bought Bungie, so you know that's going great. Yeah, anyone
Wow,
here?
you had to throw that in there, huh?
I mean,
Aw.
look, we cover Destiny 2 pretty religiously here, and I edit all of these articles about god rolls that just sound once again like Mad Libs, and you know I feel like I know a little bit about it. But yeah, anyone here get some time in with Lies of P, or any thoughts on it? TJ, did you?
I mean,
review
I
it?
did.
Yeah,
But
Denny, what
I was
you
actually
got?
gonna bring it up for Xbox. So, but yeah, no, Lies of P it's a great game. I feel like it's probably the closest I've gotten to feeling like I'm playing Bloodborne again.
Yeah,
And that's what a lot of people in my circle have been saying too. I think the art style and just the overall combat is very satisfying, and the variety as far as like you know your choices as far as you know weapon variety and stuff like that is really cool. And man, I mean the boss fights are what they are. It is definitely challenging, but in the best way.
Yeah, the boss fights in that game are like where it shined the most for me because the way that they design the machines that you come up against, they are just everything is a machine in that game, which is a little bit of it was what I considered to be a little bit of a detriment when it came to the small fry because I hate just fighting a whole bunch of robots. But when it came to the bosses, those things were so cool in the way that they were designed and interacted. And such a good point to touch on too, Denny, is that people have been screaming and crying out for Bloodborne remastered for so long, to no avail. And Neo is just like, you know what, I got you.
Yeah. Basically, I mean, I just want to say that you know, as for all the Bloodborne fans out there, we watched Demon Souls get a full blown remake, and all we're asking for is 60 FPS, and we can't get that. It's just not possible apparently. So I mean, if somebody hears our prayers, maybe one day.
but
We'll
in
be
the
with you.
Souls
interim,
it is.
in the interim, this Pinocchio Souls game is pretty solid.
I remember we watched that trailer the first time and we're like, nah, there's no way it's going to look this good when it comes out. And if anything, it exceeded our expectations.
It really did.
Yeah.
And it,
Shockingly deep arsenal. Like the idea that you can take any normal weapon in that game, disassemble it down to its blade and handle, and just put them together in any configuration you want. Like take a fire axe, take the axe head off, and put a spear on the end. Take the fire axe head, put it on like a hammer type weapon. Take a giant like booster rocket glaive handle and attach like a cattle prod to it. Just the amount of possibilities that you can bend to the playstyle that you want it to be is impressive in a way that I haven't seen anyone else do in that
Yeah, I
particular
hope so,
way.
well. I also
Kinda
appreciate
sounds-
that because it embraces like the challenge community has definitely embraced it too for that reason. Folks are doing kind of challenge runs, no death runs, no hit runs, all that stuff. You know, with different build variety, and it's awesome to watch.
I know someone who did a Dark Souls 2 ladle only run. He might be in this Discord chat right now. Shout out
One of
to
my
David.
greatest gaming achievements, all bosses. Yeah, that was rough. There are times I hated myself, but I did
But
it.
yeah, like I can't wait to see where the speedrunning community takes Lies of P because like there's like you said, there's so much optionality there, TJ, that yeah, this could be really fun to watch at speedrunning events. So those are the 6 games that we have nominated for the Shacknews Award for Best PS5 Game. I think it's time to put it to a vote. What do you guys say?
Let's do it.
I'm gonna start with Sam this time. What you got?
Oh, okay.
Sam?
Yeah. Marvel Spider-Man 2. I got to go with it. It's great.
Okay. Bill,
Spider-Man.
Ozzy,
I'm going to go with Spider-Man 2. I'll have more to say about it later in other categories, but it's phenomenal.
TJ,
I'm gonna stay with Baldur's Gate.
Baldur's Gate 3 gets its first vote. Greg.
Spider-Man 2.
Okay. Spider-Man. Donovan,
I'm going with Spider-Man.
David.
Spider-Man.
Okay. Denny.
I gotta give it to Spidey.
I
It's worth
also
the
have
wait.
to give it. I also have to give it to Spidey. Spider-Man wins. Shouldn't be that surprising. The game's amazing. I love Miles Morales, the character. So if you give me any content with Miles Morales, I'm going to consume it. I'm going to watch it. I'm going to buy it. I'm going to play it. I haven't made it all the way through the game, but I am really enjoying what I've played so far, outside of the basketball mini game that they keep shoehorning into various scenes. But yeah,
Who knew you'd have to do that more than once?
I was like, come on, again. But like, outside of that, we already talked about it. It's got a really good story. You got two protagonists that are both really interesting stories. I like the diverse gameplay that you get from playing as Peter versus playing as Miles. I like how the progression works with the suits and the gadgets and everything. Yeah, it's a great game. If you're gonna buy one PlayStation 5 game this year, it should probably be Marvel Spider-Man 2, which is our Shacknews best PS5 game of the year 2023.
I know I can snap him out of this! We can fight this together!